Hello, everybody, and welcome to One Day Today. This is episode 72, and we are in full swing of 2021. I say this a lot, but this stage is about you. We all face a point in our lives, and I can speak for myself. We all face a point of our lives. Why am I here? What's the point? What am I doing with my time? What's important? How can I show up to contribute, with the state of the world? How can I be a part of something, bigger than myself? And, we all have that point in our journey. And, in my experience and, what I've really observed just from being part of the stage for the last several months is, it's like everybody, what we all share. I mean, we all have so many different places that we come from, but what we all share is we all reach a point in our lives where there's a dark night of our soul. There's some fear, there's some trial, there's some trauma that happens in the way we don't expect it, and it essentially rocks our world. And and at that point, facing that, really being in that space of being confronted by the scary things, the dark night of our soul, is really the opportunity for us to discover what's underneath, who we truly are underneath all the masks we wear, all the personas, all the, I didn't feel like I fit in when I was younger. And because of that story I carried my whole life, I wore these masks and personas so I wouldn't have to feel again that feeling of not fitting in, but we all have some version of that. And, when we can actually experience ourselves underneath, like just who we are, underneath all the trying to impress people, trying to look good, just when we actually see what inspires us deeply underneath, besides what everyone else is saying about who we are, like when we actually experience that, there's something that opens up. And I'm talking personally, there's something that opens up that is an opportunity to actually contribute to others. And what's amazed me and what I really observe on this stage is that the impact that I'm able to make and that I observe others and their stories that they're able to make is exponentially greater when they're actually sharing their true self and who they really are, as opposed to the version of themselves or the mask or the story that many of us get lost in. And that's why I love this stage. It's humbling because there's so many beautiful people in this world who have beautiful gifts. And, Jesus said, the meek will inherit the earth. And I was talking to someone the other day about this, and I was like, what does that really mean? And to me, what that means is, the meek, people who are, maybe feel small, people who have maybe been walked over, or a million different situations. But I see the opportunity in when people actually share their gift, when people who are afraid actually are able to share their gift. There's so much to be enriched when they're actually not afraid to share their voice. And that's why I want to offer you this space to share your voice, share your story, because you're giving others the courage to be themselves. And you just who you're being, allows others to do the same. And that's the gift of sharing ourselves. I want to now invite our co-host, Matthew. Matthew, how are you doing, brother? Good to see you.
Good to see you too, brother man. I'm doing all right. Um, that 2021 is now in full swing. That got me because yeah, um, it is in full swing. I was just talking with one of our guests backstage before the show and talking about change and people's capacity to adapt to change. And I feel like in a lot of ways it comes down to expectations, like the expectations we have and the expectations we set. And there's this pervasive story that seems to be in the collective consciousness that, a new year's a new start.
Mm-hmm.
But is it really like, or is that just an expectation we're setting for ourselves? And are we setting ourselves up for failure by setting that expectation? I I know I've asked this multiple times on the show, but the question still keeps coming back. How bad does it have to get before people realize that what is going on isn't working? Like the old normal wasn't working.
Mm.
And part of the old normal was having expectations and trying to live up to those expectations and trying to create those expectations. Um, I just feel like throwing an invitation out there to just start noticing whenever there's an expectation. Like one of the things that I can always tell I is a clue that I've been had an expectation is when I'm surprised. Like
Mm.
when I'm
Oh
surprised,
yeah,
it's like, oh yeah, okay, all right. I was expecting something different.
right.
Where'd that
That's
come
I love
from?
that. That reminds me, and like I was gonna say, that made me think of, when you have like when the most beautiful thing happens in your life, is it ever something that you actually expected? You
Right?
know, isn't like ever. Like, I mean, obviously, you have a birthday party, okay, it's gonna be fun, but it's like the most impactful, powerful points in our lives are never really the thing that we knew would happen. And maybe it's like, or at least how it happened is never exactly how we expected it. But where we're headed is never actually where we think we're headed is actually never where we actually end up.
Yeah. Douglas Adams wrote a book, The Holistic Detective Agency, and one of the things he talks about there is Zen navigation. Zen navigation is you pick a car that looks like it knows where it's going, and you follow that car. What he says about it is you never end up where you want it to be, but somehow you always end up exactly where you needed to be.
Right. Yeah. I love it. Well,
And
I'm really, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
oh no, I was just saying that's life. Like just let go of the expectations and just follow your heart. And you may not end up where you wanted to be, but you'll end up exactly where you need to be.
Right. And I think that's it. It's like being comfortable in the present moment, to know that, to be able to go with the unexpected moments, and who you're being in those moments that catch you off guard is what allows us to, to see the abundance even when things seem scarce. It's practicing that gratitude, practicing that. It's those practices that we don't have to get stuck in the circumstance.
Yeah, and eventually gratitude just becomes the default, and expectations like that game just falls away.
Right. It's a whole different way to approach it. It's a different paradigm. I'm really excited about our both of our guests today. I want to welcome our first guest. I met her this week, and just heard a little bit about her story, and I'm really just excited to have her share. But I'd like to welcome Ada Lloyd.
Hi.
Welcome, Ada.
Thanks so much, Abram. I loved what you were saying earlier, where you were talking about the masks, because for years I hid behind a facade of competence and capability because I was hiding pain. And my story is that growing up as a child, I was sexually abused by my father. Now, this was at a time way back in ancient history, long before the sexual abuse of children became something that was in the public arena. It was totally hidden. And if you were a child in this situation, you felt that there had to be something wrong with you because, to the best of your knowledge, you were the only one that was experiencing it. And while it felt dreadfully wrong, you didn't have any place to turn. There weren't books, there weren't therapists, there weren't programs. There wasn't anything that dealt with it. And so my way of dealing with it was to figure out how to leave home. And I did that in a socially acceptable way by leaving for college and getting myself on a college campus 2,500 miles from home 1 month after my 16th birthday. And with that, I had a sense of physical safety, but I didn't yet have a sense of emotional safety. I brought all of that with me and hid it behind that facade of competence and capability. And fast forward a few years, and I received a life-altering epiphany. Very simply, it said, "You are not responsible for your father's choices, but you are responsible for how you allow them to impact your life." There still weren't any books. There weren't any programs. And so I began to delve into the self-help arena, looking for things that might help me figure stuff out. And I would find a principle that seemed like it might be helpful, and I would experiment with it. And if it was, I'd put it in my basket and keep it. And I'd find another principle and experiment with it. And if it didn't work, I'd toss it. And gradually I gathered a basket of principles that helped, but they weren't connected. And so my challenge at that point was to start building bridges between them and connect them so that I could proceed forth on a path to hope and to healing. Fast forward several years, and the sexual abuse of children still wasn't really in the public arena. It was just barely beginning for us to see the tip of the iceberg. And I had been asked to speak to a group about dealing with stress. Now, at this time, I'd been divorced for a few years. I had 3 kids. I had my own business. And the person who approached me to speak and knew a little bit about my background and a little bit about the fact that I had been abused, said, "You've got more stress in your life than most people do, and yet you seem to deal with it better than most people do. I want you to share your strategies for dealing with stress." And so it was okay. So when I started to speak, I talked about the stresses that we all encounter. Things like the guy that flips you off on the freeway, the boss that's, nagging you about something. And when I moved past that, it was about things like, we all have uncommon big stresses in our lives. Things like divorce or illness, financial issues, delinquent kids, having been sexually abused as a child. And I just mentioned each of those in passing and went on to say, I've experienced all of them. And here's what I've learned. Here's the strategies that help me deal with stress. Well, fast forward to the end of my message, and I had 4 women come up to me. And 3 of them individually put their arms around me, laid their head on my shoulder, and whispered into my ear. I thought I was the only one. The 4th one simply put her arms around me and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. She couldn't say anything. And that was when I realized that even though my path to hope and healing was not yet complete, I was far enough down the path that I had an obligation to reach back to those who did not yet know there was a path to hope and to healing. And so I began to do that on a pro bono basis, where I continued to run my business and raise my kids and do all of the stuff that we do as a part of life. And then the economy went wacko about 2005, and a variety of things happened, and that's a story for another day. But I wound up shutting down the business I had had for 20 years and said, okay, it's time for, version 3. What are you going to do to reinvent yourself? What are you going to do that is going to give meaning to life? Because I'd found that I had created a business with the idea that it would give me the time and the income to do some of the things I was passionate about. And that hadn't happened. I built a successful business. I'd gotten a lot of national accolades, but I wasn't truly happy. I had built a business that owned me rather than me owning it. And so I knew that what I wanted to do was to work with people to help them see the capacity that we have to change and to grow. And before I could do that, I needed some coaching certifications, but I also needed to complete the path that I was on at that time and see exactly how success looked to me. If I was going to go forward, I needed to know what I was going forward to. Now, society has a definition of success that we're all familiar with. It's the big house, it's the nice car, it's the cool vacations, it's the healthy stock portfolio, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And mom and dad may have had a definition of success, but that doesn't mean that either of those definitions are right for us. And so I had to figure out what success looked like to me. And that was the genesis behind these 7 pillars of a happy and successful life that I created at that time. And that was personal, my relationship with myself; physical, everything about my health and my body; emotional, resiliency, how we deal with the unexpected; spiritual, however we define spiritual; professional, whatever brings money into the household, be it as an auto mechanic or an attorney; financial, stability, what we're doing; and relationships of all kinds. And then take that and look at how success looked in each of those areas to me, and where I was at in each of those areas, and what I would need to do to move from where I was at to where I wanted to go. And so I started working with that, and I started coaching people around those sorts of principles. And a few years down the road, maybe 2.5, I realized that it could be much more effective in my own life and in helping others by simplifying things, so we weren't trying to work on everything at once. Weaving that unique definition of success in each of those 7 areas into a single unique definition of success. And that could effectively become like a 10-year goal. And so then figuring out how to reverse engineer and to work back from that and take steps that would take you in each of those areas where me or you want to go. And so again, worked with that for a few years. Fast forward another couple of years, and I realized that I needed a structure to keep me focused. And so that's when I created the basis of the Momentum Planner, subsequently shared it with clients. Today it's available for anybody who wants it. But what it does is it provided me and those who use it with a structure to understand where we're going, why we're going there, what the obstacles are we're going to encounter, and to take it all the way back to what I'm going to do today. Now, if I'm going to get where I want to go in 10 years, I got to know where I want to be in 5, in 3, in 1, in 90 days. 90 days is an actionable period of time. And so from there, it goes all the way back to what I'm going to do today. And that's about making commitments to myself, about specific actions I'm going to take today that will move me forward, and then being accountable. And, that's an incredible tool for healing, because it doesn't allow us to live in the past, and it doesn't allow us to simply default to the dreams of the future. If we don't want to live in yesterday, we have to heal from the legacy stress or bad habits or anything else that we have carried forward from yesterday. If we want tomorrow to be different than today, we have to change the choices that we're making today. We have to own our ability and our responsibility to make those choices and to be accountable to ourselves for the choices that we make. Fast forward another few years, and I realized that I could use that unique definition of success to be a mindful filter to know when to say no and when to say yes. So many of us are overwhelmed. Somebody asks you to do something, it's something that you can do. And, the automatic response is, yeah, I'll do that. And suddenly you've got all these monkeys sitting on your shoulder because they're everybody else's monkeys that you have taken. And you're an honorable person. And so you want to keep your commitments to other people. But what happens in the process is your commitments to yourself about what matters most to you keeps getting pushed onto the back burner. And time passes. And those things don't happen. And so when you learn to say no gracefully in a way that supports other people in what they're passionate about, it frees you up to say yes to things that are great in your life. And those are the things that are in alignment with your unique definition of success. I call that your personal lodestar. I think most of us, regardless of our religious faith or lack of it, are familiar with the New Testament story of the wise men looking for the baby Jesus. And they followed the star. They didn't know how far they had to go. They didn't know exactly where they were going. They didn't know how long it would take. But they trusted that as long as they kept their eye on that star and followed it, they would get to their ultimate destination, which would be the baby Jesus. That's what a lodestar is. So when we take our unique definition of success and we set it out there as a lodestar and have all of our choices pointed towards that, miracles happen. It's amazing the things that we can accomplish when we embrace change. Is it easy? No, not always. Frequently, not at all. It requires taking a step into the darkness outside of our comfort zone. You know, so often when we have legacy stress, like my abuse, the natural reaction is to simply suppress it and try to go on without it. And yet it will always be a factor until we deal with it. As you think about your unique definition of success, my favorite analogy is building your dream house. You have found the perfect lot. You have worked with the architect to create the perfect floor plan. You have the view you have always dreamed of. And what you're most excited about is your master bedroom. It's going to be absolutely perfect. And so you are talking to the construction foreman and you tell him how excited you are about this master bedroom and that you want him to start by building that first because you just can't wait to see it. Well, he's going to laugh at you. It's on the second floor. He can't build that without a foundation or without a first floor. It's not going to happen. It's going to come crashing down. And so often that is how conventional goal setting sets us up. It says, if you're here and you want to go here, you start here and you just simply do this and this and this and you'll get to your goal. Wrong. Because if you're here, but you don't have a solid foundation underneath it, you may get to that goal temporarily, but it's going to come crashing down just like that master bedroom will in your dream house. And so when we build a foundation, when we embrace who it is that we can be, when we have the courage to do the things that will take us there, amazing things happen. Stephen Covey had a wonderful story about climbing the ladder of success only to get to the top and find out it was against the wrong building. When you have a solid foundation, when you have a plan, when you climb your ladder of success, leaning against your building, great things happen. And life becomes the fulfillment of everything that you have imagined it could be. My quest is to help you and everybody who I can touch have that become their reality.
Wow, Ada, so powerful. And just first of all, the courage for you to overcome, being, sexually abused by your father, but what you've created and how you've magnified this trauma into this so beautiful. Like I can just sense I can just sense in your energy just this warmth and this resoluteness and it is refreshing just to hear you share, because there's so many people who have gone through the same thing, and you're overcoming and thriving and sharing is just, it gives me the chills. Just so thank you so much for sharing. That's just so powerful. Just everything you said is just so, I found it just so impactful. So thank you, first of all, for sharing. There were some things that you said that really hit home for me. I mean, you're talking about, the actionable steps and, building the foundation towards our goals. But before I even get to that, just early on, I want to just ask, like, what do you say to people who are in that facing that dark night of their soul. Those people who are, maybe they're not fully comfortable with the past. It's still something that's, they're still carrying it because something terrible happened to them. What is like the first step? Like where do people begin? Because they know they want to get out of this feeling and this being trapped in this what's happened to them, but they feel stuck. Like, what do you say to those people?
I think the first thing for people to understand is that whether you have been abused like I was, abused in another way, domestic violence, whatever, that legacy stress is that unless you choose to move beyond it, and I'll answer that in just a second, but unless you choose to move that beyond that, you're effectively allowing your abuser to continue to abuse you because you're still carrying the burden that was inflicted as a result of their choice. So the first thing is to decide that you are no longer going to allow them, to abuse you. And so the second thing is then to understand that it is going to get worse before it gets better. And it doesn't have to get worse for long, but because we tend to suppress these things, when I was a kid, if I fell off my bike and I came home with, an abrasion and it was bloody and there was dirt in it, my mother would bring out the bottle of peroxide and I'd go, no, it's going to hurt. And she's going to say, but, it's got to suck out all of the bad stuff so that it can heal. That's the same thing that I'm talking about when I say allow it to get worse. Is you're not going to live there, but you've got to suck out that bad stuff so that you can get to a place where you're not having it continue to impact you. And so, from there, it's then a path of saying, okay, what happened, and how do we move beyond it? But those are the two places that it really starts.
Yeah, making that choice for oneself. I feel like you actually talked about a lot of the foundation in getting to the place where it's even possible to recognize there is that choice. And I'd like to pull a little bit more of that out if you have a second. So one of the things you said was, you dove into the self-help arena and like you would find something and it would fit and you would hold on to it and drop the rest. And I love that. Like, that's something that I found very useful in my own life. Like, take what resonates and drop the rest. What was that feeling for you? Like, what was it where, okay, it's okay to take this part, but leave everything else? Like, where did that come from for you?
That's an interesting question, and I haven't really thought about it in quite that context. But I think what it would be is there has always been a spiritual side of my nature from the time that I was a kid. And I think it was that it simply was something that felt good that I could relate to, whether it was on a spiritual level or an emotional level or whatever it was. It resonated with me on some level. I may not understand why. I may not understand how. And kind of fast forward from the point you're talking about a few years, I started collecting inspirational quotes. I've done it for over 30 years. I've got over 3,000 of them. I can't necessarily tell you why, each one of them struck me, but there was something about it that just resonated with me. It felt good. It felt like something I wanted to hold on to. And I think those self-help principles were sort of the forerunner of that, but the same sort of concept.
Yeah. I've never been able to fully answer that question for myself either. Like, what is it? Like, how do I know something resonates? It's just a feeling. Like it feels like it clicks. But that comes into the second part of all this, which is, okay, something resonated, it clicked, but now it's whatever that is often flies in the face of conventional wisdom. And so it's building up the courage to actually trust that instead of just going with what society says is success or what society says is acceptable. And for me, I think I definitely want to know where that came from for you, but just really quick, like for me, that simply came from experience. Like it just hurt too much to keep doing what society said to do. And the only other thing that was there was this thing that I'd heard from this guy that just, oh, okay. And well, society, what they tell me to do sucks. So I'm going to try this for a while. And the more I followed that, the more joyful my life became, the more easy my life became. And that was learning to trust that resonance. I'm kind of curious what your experience with that was.
I think it's really somewhat similar in that I know the difference and have from even, when I was a young child and being abused. There's a difference between feeling good and being in pain. And I think that naturally we gravitate towards things that make us feel good. Now, when we're a child, feeling good may be going to a movie that was fun or, going to the beach or something. But I think as we begin to mature, that maybe there's a transition that goes from feeling good or fun to a feeling of peace or a feeling of joy. Those are deeper emotions. And they're a lot happier place to be. And so I think one of the things that happens is early on, Abram talked about, the mask that we tend to wear. Masks take a lot of energy. And there's a lot of fear that's attached to masks. We use them to protect ourselves from what's out here because we're concerned about if what's out here pierces that mask, we're going to be judged, we're going to be hurt, something bad is going to happen. But once you can come to the place of finding that inner peace with whatever ugliness there is, and I think ugliness and pain come from three places. Yeah, we make poor choices. We make mistakes, and sometimes they come from that. Other people make poor choices that impact us. And those things cause us pain. And then there's what I call the Katrinas in our life. Like Hurricane Katrina did an immense amount of damage to hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. And yet it was nobody's choice. All of those things, can create pain. But when we simply are in a place where we make peace with who we are, our part in it, whatever that may or may not be, and create a comfort level, and we lose that necessity to have that protective veneer, that mask, then the energy that was involved in keeping that in place can be used in so many more productive ways. And that includes our healing, our progress, our growth, our service to others.
Oh, yeah. To me, that's exactly what the Buddha meant when he said, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Yeah.
It's so powerful,
It all comes down to the choices we make.
Yes.
And here's the crazy thing we don't always think about. We make literally thousands of choices every day. Fortunately, we don't have to think about the choice to breathe or for our heart to pump blood or to do some of those sorts of things. But we still make so many choices, minuscule, tiny choices that we make without even thinking about them.
Mm-hmm.
Our lives are the cumulative impact of those choices.
Mhm.
The more we put ourselves in a place to consciously make choices that'll take us where we want to go and build habits so that the choices that we make without even thinking about them are taking us there, the more joy and the more peace and the more happiness we experience in life.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. That choice, even it's funny in my own experience, of the choice, even when I'm avoiding making a choice is a choice.
And it's generally the worst one.
Mhm.
Even a
Yeah.
bad
Mhm.
choice is frequently better than no choice.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you again, Ada, for just sharing your insight, your wisdom, and your story. It's so inspiring. Thank you. We're going to check back in with Ada in just a little bit. We're going to check in with our audience and invite our second guest, and we're going to bring Ada back in a moment. But thank you, Ada, for sharing with us.
My pleasure.
Yes, thank you again, Ada, and thank you at home tuning in with us. This is your stage. This is for you to share, your experience, what you faced in your life. It takes courage and it takes something. But in my experience of just being on this stage and sharing is, there's something beautiful on the other side. And as Ada was saying earlier, we have to make that choice to face the darkness, the dark night of our soul, being in that lonesome valley, but when we're standing in that valley, it seems like there's no way out. But I assure you, I promise you, when you share, your story, what you're going through, others are going to be going through the same thing, and they're going to see themselves, and we're all going to be able to see ourselves in the stories we share. And that's what the stage is about. And our mission here is bringing you and me and communities together in joyous celebration, unifying humanity in our diversity to create a better world for us all. So I invite you to share your story on this virtual stage. Now I would like to welcome our next guest. We have with us Rich Kozak. Welcome, Rich.
Gentlemen, how are you?
Fantastic.
Well.
Thank you for being here.
What a beautiful guest Ada was. I don't know if it's public chat, but I typed it in for her and for others. A website called theugliestword.com. A client of mine named Annie Margis just launched a book in November about childhood incest, which is so common it will make your head spin. 1 out of every 3 girls, 1 out of every 5 boys is sexually abused before they're 18 years old, and 90% of the time it's in the home by a family member or someone close to the family. That is crazy, but it's real. And I didn't know that. Okay.
Wow.
And he's my client, and we just launched her book. So the purpose of the book is to start the conversation, because talking is the beginning of healing. And that's one of the things you and me have just been discussing. So from Annie Margis's Heart, and you can find her on Amazon. I think the book is still 99 cents on Kindle, so just get it and share it. The billions, we're talking billions of people have been touched by it. So there are people in your networks, hundreds of them, who will never tell you that they're an adult who is that they didn't kill themselves or ruin their life, but they're still deeply affected by it. And it will help them. It's like, yeah, it's remarkable. So anyway, there goes. Yeah. Thank you for letting me do that. So boy, we're here to share our story and where we've come. So I'll put a frame around who I am and what I do so that the story makes sense. For 44 years now, I have defined and languaged brands. 20 years of that was was at an ad agency, high-tech ad agency, had partners in 21 countries, and big companies, $14 billion companies. It was big boy branding. And the purpose, and it's addictive. And I was at the peak of my career, but I was doing all-nighters. And so when I turned 50, I resigned. I changed my prayer. Lord, I know you haven't made me a guy you want me to just die of a heart attack because I'm an ad agency executive and I'm all overweight and addicted to coffee and chocolate all day long. So I'm resigning this addictive career. Show me what you want me to do. I'm ready. Crazy moment. I'd have a lot of money put away. I started doing other things. I got right into real estate. I started doing multi-level marketing stuff. I wanted to do residual income stuff, so I still had an income, but I was looking, waiting. I was in show me mode. I'm still in show me mode. Show me what you want me to do. I'm ready. I had no clue. It's a matter. Okay, so here's the story. You got a guy who's a global branding consultant whose job is to teach, to guide, in some cases, very large companies, what they must do and how they shape and define and language their brand and how it speaks and how it behaves to achieve their business strategies, right? But yet, as a teenager, if you ask me, what do you want to be? I thought there's something broken with me because I couldn't tell you. I wanted to do everything, and I was doing all these things. I'm kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. You know, I had to learn about insight. I had never touched my life. As a matter of fact, I was like extremely empowered. I have very empowering parents. Oh, let us help you do that. Let us take you to this rehearsal. You know, I was doing all kinds of stuff, and I won't go on and on because it'll sound like I'm, bragging, but I don't. But I was successful at whatever I did, and I think, frankly, whatever I wasn't successful, I just didn't talk about it and forgot about it. So, whatever I kept doing, I was successful at. And I had this thing. If I could see it, I could create it. I could do it. And I created businesses when I was 13 and 14 and 15. And I taught myself, my dad said, you better do your own taxes. So, I taught myself accounting. And it's like, and then I went to college and stayed at home because I went to Penn State. My dad was a prop there. So it was like kind of easy. I ran businesses. And then I got, but I didn't know any what I wanted to do. And I ended up, because I kind of was businessy, I chose marketing. Sounded like the closest thing. I came out with a degree in marketing with a sideline in playing in a rock band for several years on the road, but we won't go there. But I did that too. So it's like when you've played in rock, but you can talk to CEOs in a $14 billion company. It's like, that's pretty broad mess. I worked in a factory for a while too. So it's like all of these things come together. So here's the kid who doesn't know what he wants to do. What he doesn't want to be, because I want to do everything. I didn't know what I want to be, and I become a global branding consultant that guides companies to what they have to be. But the irony of that has never eluded me. But at 50, I was addicted to it, and I quit. The reason I'm here today is because we're talking about where we're thinking about purpose. We're thinking about how does it get aligned? How do we find that? How do we discover it? I've been blessed. I am I'm certain of it, doing exactly what my journey has shaped me for. I quit branding. I'm really good at it. I quit when I was 50 years old. Now it's almost 20 years later. And every day I help individuals now, not big companies, individuals who really want to make an impact on others. People like Ada, people that have a gift, people that have a skill, people that have a business. Maybe they did it for 40 years, or maybe they just got started and they have a really new thing and they want to share it, but they don't have a brand and they don't know about branding. They don't know anything. And branding is very intimidating. It's very confusing because the industry uses it like a buzzword, and a lot of the industry uses, let's call it, entrancing language. And so it just, so they don't teach you how to do it. They just, teach you to buy it. But I get to help people write down the impacts they clearly see in their mind's eye making when their brand thrives, even though it's not thriving, but the level that they see, maybe they have 200 clients in their backyard for the rest of their life, or maybe their work is being translated into 200 languages. Or maybe they're speaking, maybe they're handing off their skill to others so that they create a legacy and it stays in the universe. It's like maybe they're helping people step into a deeper and stronger relationship with their creator. Whatever it is, when they write down clearly those impacts, we can define the brand they must become to make those impacts. Now, that sounds like jargon. It sounds like trick. It's not trick. You were talking, Abram, you brought up the word mask. A lot of people think about brand. Oh, brand is a mask. Like, oh, I'm going to put on my brand, right? It's not. It shouldn't be. I call that crossing the credibility line. When you say you're green, but you're really not green. You say, like Verizon says, you can call one number when the federal government requires that they have silos that are separated. It's like, you just crossed the credibility line. It's like, sorry for slamming Verizon, but it's like, you just don't do that. What happens when a brand comes from inside and it is the impacts you see clearly making in your mind's eye, and it's what's in your heart that you really want to do, and you define and language that brand so that everything the brand says and does is aligned to those impacts, you speed to the impacts. And you don't create confusion and misinformation, which is what a lot of brands do. They try this and they try that. It's consistent language that transfers energy, and everything aligns, and you get there faster and you thrive sooner, and it reshapes how people think about the purpose of business from this to impact, and everything's aligned. And so branding that builds a business platform and makes people more successful sooner is good, and more abundant, wonderful. But our businesses are not why we're here. But a platform enables us to step into our purpose. And everyone has things in their heart. And in this process, they get to let them flow out and get there faster. So the story, I mean, it's about models and mentors. In Matthew, did I hear you use the word aho? Did I hear you say that?
You did, yeah.
Okay, as I thought. So that's are you a Harv Eker aficionado? Was that warrior camp? What was that?
Aho, it's the Hawaiian word for I agree or amen. Or,
All right, fine. All right. Anyway,
yeah.
So, I went into show me mode, and when you ask, you start to see that things happen for a reason. You start to see that people come into your life as models or as mentors, maybe for a lifetime. I had a parent, I just buried a 100-year-old and 5 months mom 2 weeks ago. She was a marvelous mentor and model of grace and caring and empowering. But some people come into your life for a season, like at a job, like a colleague, or a paternalistic, maternalistic boss. And sometimes it's just for a moment. You watch someone present and something turns in your head. You hear a phrase, you see an example, and something wakes up in your heart. A little fire lights under you and perks you up. So here I am, crazy busy at the ad agency. I'm doing all-nighters at 50. But yet somehow, because of my background and my mentors, I would come home, wake my 2 boys up and say, "Dear Lord, thank you for teaching us that we're here to do 2 things, share love and praise you, and everything else is man-made," and put them back to sleep. I knew enough to say that. I don't know why, but I did. And when I hear talk about choices come from models. People need to share with us what good choices are and bad choices are and what character is. And one of the moments along the way is I had somebody who I thought I was going to help with her brand. She was a coach and a networking expert. But I felt that the way she came across needed some work, and I was just going to talk to her. So I had her over to my home, which I call the Brand Ranch, and I made this nice Italian lunch, and we're down in the garden, and she turns it on me. She is a neuro-linguistics programming master. I didn't know anything about it. I couldn't spell NLP, and that sounds sort of funny, but it was true. And she said, look, do you trust me? And I'm like, look, I come from West Virginia. We're taught to trust people until they give us a reason not to. So she goes, great, hold my hands and close your eyes. So she told me, you have no idea how powerful this will be when you realize the power your unconscious mind, which really drives 90% of the bus, has when you start to understand how it and your conscious mind connect or don't connect and what to do about it. You'll listen differently. You'll talk into people's listening instead of to your own talking. And I said, fine. And so I went and I started, and 3 years later, I became a certified trainer. Now, I don't train neurolinguistics programming, but I listen. And she was right. I went to a whole nother level of how I listen to who people are and what they're going through and what they say about what the problem is. It's up to us to choose. We can't choose what happens to us. Ada mentioned the Katrinas. We can't choose, I'm going to pass on the Katrina, thank you. Can't do that. Or an abusive parent. But the way we respond to what happens to us is totally in our power once we realize it is. I worked with Lisa Nichols for 3.5 years in an emotional healthiness training called Motivating the Teen Spirit. And teenagers, even at 14, 15, 16, did not know they had the power to hold on to or get back the self-agency that they had given away. It's a really important life lesson. So this neurolinguistics program, all of a sudden, it made me aware of how much control we really have over our choices, about our attitude, about our mindset. All these things you hear about in self-development work, they're buzzed around, but it's absolutely true. I mean, what's in your mind is in your life. You listen to people on the HEAL tapes, you'll hear them talking about stress. You're worrying, your worry turns into stress, and the stress has literally effects chemically, and it can make you sick. So wait a minute. If worrying and what's in your mind can make you sick, can't what's in your mind make you well? Yes. These are choices. So here it is today after, quitting and saying I'm branding anymore. And now I get to help people paint clear pictures of how they can help others step into a more powerful life, affect their lives in beautiful ways, and make themselves more successful in their business and in their gift, and step into their purpose. That their third book has to do with their real purpose. Their first book has to do with being an expert at what they do. And it's just a process. And I teach that process. And I will tell you, I was really stressed at the agency. I don't have stress now. It feels like love. My work, which is the same process, feels like love. It's a choice. It's for a whole different reason. And it's a blessing. And everyone can have that. We are all here for a reason. All of us were made in the image of our Creator for a reason. If we have, NLP teaches us we're in trance 90% of the time, our own trance, our spouse's trance, our boss's trance, the job's trance, the world's trance of the news, trance of the pandemic. We're in a trance. We're not in control. We just let the trance guide us. We drive home and we think, wow, how did I get home? Trance. It's like, we're in trance. When you learn to put yourself, in control and focus on the impacts you want to make, life gets so much sweeter. And then you get to step into purpose. So I get to do that all day long. I get to teach about it, I get to talk about it. And I've had phenomenal mentors and trainers. A lot of the people who talk on stages in the last 20 years were my mentors. I went to all kinds of stuff, spent a lot of money and time after I left my job. And I've been blessed that journey got me ready, even though I took a little hiatus from branding. When I came back, it's like, I get to do this. What a God blessing it is. And like I said, everybody can feel that way. So the people who find me, and these days on Zoom, it's easy to touch a lot of people a lot more quickly That can happen to everyone. And when the language your brand uses is consistent and transfers energy, it's going to happen faster than you can ever imagine. I have a book coming out called Impact Driven Branding, 7 Steps to Ensure Your Brand Impacts People's Lives and the World. And it gives away the process. It's like, hey, do these steps. Just do it. Don't get intimidated by it. Just do it. And it's a blessing. But 3 or 4 books down the road, there's going to be a book called Brands in God's Hands that really gets me into my purpose. And I wish that for all of you, anybody who's listening here, no matter what your journey has been.
Thank you, Rich. There's so much gold in what you shared, and I appreciate you sharing your story. So many things stood out in what you were saying, and just kind of the last thing what you're talking about, just branding, coming full circle. Just I really appreciate you distinguishing between authentic branding and inauthentic branding. How we in culture we very much perceive brands as this just plastic thing that we observe things through, but I kind of see brands as like very similar to like the function of a boundary, and that which is it's very much to preserve, protect, and present the entity or the treasure, so to speak. It's like, and it's when you're authentic, I mean internally, like who you are and your purpose, and you present that in a concise way, in a clear way, articulate it. It not only brings it to fruition, but it's like an internal, external, like. It's like a way of bringing together the unmanifested and the manifested world in our own experience of how we articulate the world around us and our own, what we're up to.
Abram, you are absolutely right. And when it comes from inside the person, if it really stands for what they want to do and who they really are, and the language, you left that one word, consistent. You said articulate. You've got to be consistent. You can't say it one way and then say it another way and have people go, I know exactly what you do. They just get confused. Mm-hmm. And people do that all the time. Well, they have to find out different ways to say it. No, stop. Just consistent. Okay. But yeah, when it comes from inside, it is truly authentic. And I will make it easy for you. A brand is a perception, but it's not your perception of you. It's the perception others have of you. So you took 10 people, they might have 10 perceptions. You're not doing a very good job of branding, which is creating a consistent perception, but it's just a perception, and that's it. Your job is to create that. Well, how do you do that? Well, how about consistent language? It's like, that's a really great start. If you use 20 metaphors, say, well, I'm kind of like Yogi Bear, but I am sort of like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're like, what the hell are you? Yeah. And so, yeah. I mean, it's not irony. The beauty of a woman like Annie Margus, who wrote The Ugliest Word about childhood incest, because she's a recovering victim, and she decided to talk about, write a book, write a play, wrote a movie. She's going to produce a movie. It's like, that'll affect billions of people. And she comes to me and she goes, can I publish my book on your publishing company? Are you kidding me? Like, who did that? Things happen for a reason. We find it. There's a reason, Abram, you, Matthew, and I are meeting. I don't know what it is, but there's a reason. And the dots connect. We're in control of our response to what happens to us. That's all the control we have. Dale Carnegie was good. He goes, don't worry about what you can't control. He was absolutely right. Don't even have to read the book. Read a book on worry. That's the book. You got it. It's like, don't worry about what you can't control. So, and you don't even worry, because worry is mental stress. And now you're going to get sick. People say, like, I know exactly why I got cancer. Okay. It's true. And so, oh my God. But when it's, the story about, hey, he's got something wrong, spend an afternoon, you think you got a problem, spend an afternoon in a veterans hospital. It's like, you'll be coming out going, whoa, great day, baby. I'm telling you what, it's like, my life is so good. Yeah, come on. So we get, if we're other directed, how we're going to impact others. And that's how we focus. to share, because impacting others, giving them something that helps them, making their life, whatever, is it's a way, like if you cook, cooking is love. It's a way to share love. Impact is love. It's like when you're when you're impact driven, you're sharing love, which is one of the two things we're here for. And then when it's successful, praise God, bam, there you go. You got them both. Check it off. You haven't wasted your trip, your ticket. You know, you may get another shot, but you only get one shot at this life. You know, you might get another one. You know, let's not put money on that right now. You know, let's like work on this one. But and so it's not like rocket science. It's just, well, how do you do it? And I got this gift to say, look, just take these steps. And so I'm about to give it to the universe. So it's like, get me back on when the book is on. It'll be April. The book will be out in April. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I just want to share it. If I can touch millions of people and they can it shifts them from business to businesses impact, and they get there faster anyway. It's like, woo! Now, not everybody's ready, but the people who have done something for 30 years and are ready to take it to a higher level, or they are, getting serious about really being, more powerful in it and touching more people, but they're not good at language and they don't know about branding, and nobody to trust, or somebody just creates something. They have a unique method, like Ada. She has unique language and she has this method that's a compilation of all the things she's been through, and she has names for it. That kind of a person, they're ready. They're ready. And for them to find it, it's a blessing to their life and their business, and to all the people whose lives they'll touch, because they'll accelerate to get there.
Going back. Oh, I'm getting Rick. Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah.
Hands up. I didn't. Again. Yeah.
I'm going to keep you muted for a second because it seems to be working now. Okay, never mind. It fixed itself. Cool. I don't do this very often, but it does feel appropriate to actually address the audience for a second, because there's two distinctions in what both you and Ada were talking about that feels like it could be helpful. They've been very helpful to me, and they're constructs that I use to kind of perceive myself in the world differently. The first is, what am I? And so you talk about, brand comes from the inside. Well, what exactly does that mean? What is it? What is the inside? Where does that come from? And something that has been percolating for the last few months has been, when you're born, the mind is blank. You're still there, but there's nothing on the brain. It hasn't been programmed yet. And as you grow up, you start to get told things by your parents. You start to observe things and have experiences, and the mind takes those experiences and turns them into a meaning. And those meanings become the programming, the kind of the building blocks of the program that eventually becomes Matthew or Rich or Abram or Ada. But that personality, that ego, is just a construct. It doesn't really exist.
Correct.
And so what is that inside? What are you really? What am I really? And there's a million different answers to that question. None of them even come close to what I can, none of them even come close to the experience I've had of what I am. But the one that feels the most appropriate to share right now is awareness. I am that which observes the feelings and the thoughts and the experiences and the sensations that come through this body. The second distinction is choice. There was a part where you were talking where I feel like, to me, you said the word choice, but what I heard was decision. And what I mean by that is, a decision has reasons. A decision is something the mind does. So all the programming blocks that make up Matthew are all they have reasons why they're there, and they have reasons to continue a certain way. Just as an example, often I will go and eat pizza when I'm not feeling bad, because to Matthew, pizza is a comfort food. Even though in the long term, pizza makes me feel bad, in the short term to Matthew, it makes Matthew feel good. So that's a decision. It's a decision to eat pizza based on reasons. A choice to me is I simply choose, and is that thing that is bigger than me. It is the what I am, what came into this body at birth, that simply chooses. There are no reasons. And what is really funny about that is you just said this exact same thing. I don't know why we're here talking. I don't know why we're here meeting. The reasons don't become apparent until after. But what I have discovered is when I choose to trust, or when I decide, actually, if we're going to use that proper distinction, when Matthew decides to trust the choices that I make, life becomes easier and more joyful and more content consistently over and over and over again. The reasons don't matter.
There are two follow your gut and follow your heart. Those two phrases come to mind. The what's inside is your heart. The heart, and are we talking about the muscle? No. We're talking about the figurative heart, or the figurative heart, the feeling, the sensitivity, the appreciation, the honoring, the how you respond. So somebody said, they have a real heart for animals. There you go. They're real heart for music. Hey, ever see a young child pick up an instrument? I'm a violinist, so I tell the story in one of the books I wrote. My teacher, Carmen Cavuto, when I was in second grade, and I was studying with this guy, and he said, let me show you something. And he took a little song like, I don't know, let's call it the Itsy Bitsy Spider. Just everybody knows that, right? You know that song? Because otherwise we'll do Joy to the World. Okay, fine. So Itsy Bitsy Spider. He took some song that I knew, and he said, there are the notes right there. And he played them. Da, 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 played the notes, right? Then he closed his eyes, and he played it again. And he added pace, dynamic, flair, breath, heart, and he turned it from notes into music. Those kind of lessons from mentors. My NLP master says the oldest memory I remember of my being a child is I think I was 1.5 or I was 2, and I was standing in my diaper, and she was female. I was standing in my diaper in my army boots, my cowgirl boots, and my dad was a rough alcoholic. He was a salesman, real successful, but tough alcoholic, and sort of mean. And he had been drinking, and he said, "Come over here." And I said, I put my hands on my hips, and I said, "You make me." And she said, I didn't know whether my mom or dad would get to me first, but they both tried to get me, and dad got me, and he threw me across the room. This is not my story. This is her story. And I broke through the wall. She goes, that's the earliest memory I have of my dad. And then she said, remember, she's an NLP master. And she goes, he was doing the best he could with the tools he had. Who can talk like that? Okay. There's a path of enlightenment that we're all on. And the further along you are in connectedness with spirit and understanding of the human condition, in this case, neurolinguistics programming is the understanding of behavior, the more you see, and actually the better choices you make. So we're all made to be mentors, and we're all mentors. We're all made to be mentored, and we're all mentors. We can mentor someone that hasn't done what we've done, even if they're 20 years older than we are. A child can mentor us. It's like one of our choices is whom we put at our mentor table and whom we remove. You can remove your mentor, Ada could remove her dad from her mentor table. And that's one of the things. She removed him not only from her mentor table, but from the you have control over my emotions table, which is wonderful. What a God blessing to do that.
Yeah, let's bring Ada back in. I want to. There's so many dots that are connecting here. Welcome back, Ada.
Thanks.
So I wanted to give you both an opportunity to share what you heard in each other's stories, because I heard so many connections. This always happens. We don't try, but there's so many dots. I'm feeling connected.
Absolutely.
You know, one of the things that Rich said that is just one of the things I'm passionate about is that we don't have control over our circumstances, but we always have control over our response and our attitude. And, you know, that's our circumstances don't bring us happiness. It's our response and our choices, our attitude. That's what brings us happiness and joy.
There are
And
books about people at Auschwitz who couldn't see afterward. They figured this was it, and they died. But those who had a plan, those who saw, boy, when we get out of here, we're going to change the world. We're going to make sure nobody ever forgets it. We're going to establish it. We're going to, I'm going to play music again. I'm going to do math again. You know, I'm going to teach kids and make sure that nobody ever, it's like when they saw hope, when they had hope and vision, you know, it even says in the Bible, man without vision perishes. And so it's a choice. What's in your mind is in your life. You literally can kill yourself.
there's so much power in hope.
Oh, that's really powerful. Just, you know, it's like where you're just referring to that example of people in Auschwitz, you know, like the fact that we can, it's like they died, like they may have died before they even left, like because they didn't have vision. Like it's like before they even got out and they even broke out, like they were in prison spiritually before so like, and I can see that applies just like how it's the future we're living into. You know, it's like whatever we're excited about is kind of what keeps our subconscious mind. You know, it keeps us in the high spirits of, hey, I'm going to do this. It's like when we are inspired by the future we're living into, it stacks, it compounds. We actually create new things out of something that may have just been an idea at first, but we can actually create a beautiful future for ourselves and for that, like you've kind of said, like this is something that I've discovered for myself. And what this movement and this mission is, you know, when we actually choose to show up in our own purpose, in our own passion, in our own, you know, experiencing of ourselves as the divine expression of the universe that we truly are, but also hold that space for our neighbor, what's possible. And that's kind of like, that's my vision. That's what excites me, is like, what new, I want to taste the new recipe when two cultures have never met each other just start interacting. I want to hear the music that people who like different cultures I want to hear and experience and taste and all the possibility of when we can actually be enriched by the people who have completely opposite different experiences than our worldview.
I knew there was some about you I liked. Definitely one of them. Okay, so I have a client, and it's great. She's from Africa. She is currently the director of diversity and inclusion at a 1,400 member law firm in 11 countries, and she happens to be here in Los Angeles. And she found me through somebody saying, "Do you know Rich Kozak?" You know, it's like, okay, fine. So, but the expertise that we are talking, one of the expertises that we are talking about getting her consultancy credit for, is reimagining being human on this planet. Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Why not? And
talk about vision. You know, vision is like, oh, I love that. I want that. What's in there? You know, it's an intangible brand promise for sure, but it is a bag of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a bag of hope. It's like a big bag.
Yeah, what it means to be human. Yeah.
She is the one. Her name
really quick.
Edith Gondoy, by the way.
Say her name one more time.
Edith. Let's
Okay.
get her. Yeah. She'll be ready soon.
just real quick, once more to anyone watching. There's been a lot of talk about trauma today. And choice and what we choose, how we choose to respond to trauma. Something that we talk about here, and something that I just, it feels like it's time to bring it home. On the other side of trauma lies wisdom. And the experience of growing that wisdom in trauma often becomes the most powerful story and the most powerful tools that you can use to change other people's lives. Part of what this is about is bringing those stories together and sharing them. And I just want to thank both of you, Ada and Rich, for coming and sharing your stories. Like, I really appreciate it. And let's dispel this fear around showing other people our pain, because it's our pain that kind of grows us into who we are today.
One of the huge lessons I learned from someone else, and I won't tell the story, but the lesson is we all have certain things we hold behind our backs, figuratively, that we really don't want to talk about because it won't make us look good, or we don't want that story to come out, or we just would rather not talk about it. But when we put it in front of us and put a spotlight on it and share it, not only do we heal and strengthen ourselves, but we touch a lot of other people. And so you just said, Matthew, and Ada, what you're living, and Abram, what you just expressed. Now I know why I'm on your show.
Oh, it's such a profound. It's very profound, the power of vulnerable sharing of of warts and all. You know, everything. You know, what we want to hide those masks, because it's like, oh, if they pierce through my mask and my story, if they see that I'm really this way, they're gonna reject me, they're gonna judge me, whatever. And it's like, it seems so counterintuitive, but when we actually share, it's like the most power that we have is when we know we're powerless, you know. And it's like, it's ironic, but it's like, and it seems like at the depths of the worst suffering we've ever experienced in our life is actually where the source of, you know, of us discovering our actual power and our actual strength, despite whatever's happening in the world. It's like we always have that choice. We're gonna close up now. I just wanted to give Ada and also Rich any last words you'd like to share. This has been such a powerful conversation. I'm really just touched and really inspired by both of you sharing your wisdom and your story.
Thanks, Abraham. The one thing I would share in conclusion is, as you talk about the things you just talked about, when we are no longer hiding those things, we're no longer putting them behind our back, there's such a feeling of freedom. We're not investing emotional energy to our detriment and to the detriment of other people we could be impacting. When we get rid of that, there's an exhilaration of freedom with which we can live. It's a buzzword with authenticity, but just what I would say is to anyone, do whatever you have to do to get rid of the mask, because the other side of it is glorious.
It's beautiful. It's like the garden, you know, when it's whatever we water is what grows. You know, we can water, you know, the beautiful possibilities of joy and laughter and, you know, inspiration, and watch them flourish. Or we can water those thoughts and toxic thoughts and emotions that are essentially there to, when we identify with them, they're just there to what we perceive to protect us, when in fact it's really just causing disease and stress, you know.
People don't see that, but they're doing it.
Yeah.
I think that's a meme for you. We learn our real power when we've been powerless, or something like that. That's amazing. So the mask isn't worth it. The mask isn't worth it. Now is the time to define the brand, the person, the entity, the impact you will become. Now's the time. Don't wait. Don't live on someday Isle. It sounds nice. It sounds nice on Sunday Isle. Don't live there.
Right. I mean, you've brought home exactly what this is about. It's not a someday maybe, but not now. It's like it's right now we choose, and that's why our tagline for our whole nonprofit foundation is one day is today. It's right now we choose. It's not the future that we hope might happen if we just avoid any part in that future. It's like someday I'll be happy. Someday I'll have my dreams come true. And it's like they're not going to happen except right now that you choose it to happen. And like if you stand, it's like our words are so powerful. But thank you both again. This is I could talk to you both for hours. We could have a whole lot. You go on for longer. I feel like there's so much more to be said. So I'd love to have both of you back in the near future and share more.
Okay.
Pajama party, perfect. I'll have a theme pajama party episode. I like it. Thank you so much for being with us, both you, Ada and Rich.
And thanks for teaming up with Ada. What a yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you both again, and thank you at home for tuning in with us, for just being a part of sharing this moment with us. You know, again, I want to invite you to share your story, your gift on this virtual stage. You know, that's why we're here. We are here to share you, because you have something that enriches us all. And whether you know what that is or you're still looking, like you sharing just your experience of what you're facing and what you faced and what you've overcome impacts the lives of millions. Even if you can't see it directly, who you are being right now impacts the entire universe. Every smile, smirk, frown, every handshake or fist we extend, every word we make, kept or broken, impacts the entire cosmos. And when we all realize and recognize and actually stand there, that's what excites me. What's possible when we're actually standing there. And that's part of our vision, is humanity rising in a connected world with each person's unique contributions being valued and magnified through a higher level of collaboration, producing unprecedented new realms of possibility. And that's what we're doing, one story at a time. Thank you again for joining us. You have been just amazingly supportive, and just thank you again to Ada and Rich for joining us. I love you all. Be safe, be well. We will see you next week. And as always, one day is today.